Jennifer Vatsa from Belladonna's Botanicals, and today I'm going to talk about something that actually was really new to me recently, but I've taken a deep dive into, and I would like to share some thoughts on, and that is the topic of walk-in souls or soul walk-ins. So I didn't really know a whole lot about this concept until recently. It's something I kind of heard of on the periphery and just never really kind of took a deep dive and looked into. So so with soul walk-ins is that I'll give you the sort of the premise of it, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in depth and some of the experiences there. Basically what happens is that you have the soul you're born with, but at some point in time in your life, you could, not saying it's going to happen to everyone, but you could become what they call a walk-in soul, which means your soul exits and another soul comes in and takes over. You may not have ever have any awareness that this has happened or is happening. So that's sort of the general gist of it. Now, I had to do a deep dive into this because I had um a client who was told in the reading by another practitioner that they may uh, that they are a walk-in soul, will become one. So I had to do some divination on that for them. So I have a specific oracle deck that's like for past life readings, and then through channeling and divination, kind of came up with some answers for them, but that's private client information. But I in order to do this particular reading, I really had to take a deep dive into walk-in souls and like the mechanics of it and how it can happen. And I found it really fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts out there on it. Some of it's a little new age woo woo. Now, I would say this, because there is some overlap with mental health diagnoses. So I would also encourage, because there's a little bit from the research I did that overlaps with dissociative identity disorder. So I would also, encourage anyone who thinks that they might be a walk-in soul or something to also consider that getting a mental health evaluation too, because mundane stuff is a thing. You can't just rely on magical reasoning and solutions and whatnot. But that aside, so how does a soul walk-in happen? This can be something that happens for a number of reasons. The current incarnation soul can become very corrupt and damaged and need to kind of go away to heal, at which point another soul comes in and takes over. You may not there's some debate on how that happens. You may negotiate this, but you may have a soul contract for this. It may be something that's a carryover from a past life. It may be something that's negotiated like on an unconscious level. I know in one of the cases that I saw, the person didn't know that they had a walk-in soul until they had had a past life reading done, and it came out that way. So it's like, well, how can I become a walk-in soul if I didn't agree to this? Well, there are some ways that can happen. There's a lot of evidence that's surrounding this can happen during near-death experiences, or at a time in which that person may die for like a few seconds or minutes or whatever. Another soul could kind of come in, because it might be that in that soul is because the original soul has become so damaged and needs to and I think there's some evidence that there can be multiple souls, like the damaged soul and then a soul that comes in to kind of like heal that soul. So that's one way, through like near-death experience, through or not, maybe not, or like illness or disease or something like that. It can also happen, and I've seen this before with like parasitic entity attachments. Excessive drug use and addiction is like opening a portal to that. The problem therein is you're likely going to get, you don't have control over what soul ends up in your body. And if you become like an open vessel or portal, in that sense, you can end up with like a wandering soul that might not be so great. And I had recently done some divination and channeling on this, because there was something I was trying to get more information. This was after I did the reading for the client. I was trying to get more information on it, and like what I had suspected was that, and what came out was that these wandering souls that attach themselves to particular people were that of executed prisoners, that stayed earthbound. A lot of times when you look at, and this is kind of going down a whole entire different story into spirit work, but a lot of times, ghosts and poltergeists and stuff like that have had very sudden or traumatic deaths, and that's why they kind of they linger. Sometimes they don't know they died. But I started seeing a lot of synchronicities in this prior to when I was asked to do the reading. I had randomly last year, it's an old show that's been off the air for probably 10, 15 years, but the show Ghost Whisperer. And so, sorry, I'm gonna put spoiler alert here in case you haven't watched it and want to watch it. But at one point in time, one of the main characters dies, and he stays earthbound because he wants to stay there with his wife, who's the other main character, and he doesn't want to cross over. And at some point they're witness to like a car accident, and one of the victims of the car accident dies, and at that person's moment of death, this earthbound spirit jumps into that person's body and becomes a walk-in soul in that. But what happened there is he didn't remember who he was in that past incarnation initially, and then the person whose body jumped in had complete amnesia. So what's interesting about that, and this, even though it's a TV kind of version of it, is that if someone has a walk-in soul, and a lot of times that soul can be have the memories and knowing and understanding of that, who that person was and is and whatnot, and their life experiences. But there might be occasions where that new soul, once it lands, depending on what type of soul it is, may completely transform that person's personality and like mannerisms, and suddenly they're talking differently, they're using different words, different they're not speaking in the way that they normally do, or they'll suddenly change their appearance out of nowhere when they don't have a history of doing that. Like for me, if I came in tomorrow and my hair was blue and green, it would not be I've had blue and green hair before, so their mannerisms might be different. Like, as you know from watching my videos, I talk with my hands a lot. So if I suddenly kind of stopped doing that, or spoke in a very different way and wasn't as animated as I normally am, and my personality entirely shifted very, very rapidly, it's usually pretty noticeable. That could be something that would indicate it. And most of the times, even if people are walk-ins, they're probably not going to be aware of it mean, they might if they're a little more spiritually in tune, but first you want to rule out psychosis, because that can or any mental health things can also impact some of that stuff, or neurological, like if you have a gigantic brain tumor, your personality might suddenly shift because you have a gigantic brain tumor that's doing shit. I also believe through doing certain types of magical work and opening yourself up to be not just to channel information, but kind of opening yourself up. I feel like any kind of spirit possession, or demonic possession would be kind of different than this, because that tends, I mean, it depends on if you believe, all the stories that you see on videos about of people having long-term possessions, but where was going with that? But it's opening yourself up in a way, and this can especially make you vulnerable. Like if you're doing a lot of psychedelics, especially, it changes your brain chemistry. Like I know because I do therapeutic ketamine treatments, and what happens is it opens up your neuroplasticity and makes you more susceptible to change. But but they also say, hey, don't do ketamine, you have at least 7 to 14 days in between each treatment. So I'm probably actually due for one. So if I can't fall back to sleep tonight, this morning at 6 a.m., and I don't wake up at 6 a.m. I'll stay awake, but don't wake up. They say to have that time between that, because if you are doing psychedelics and a lot of drugs on a daily, regular basis, you're in this permanent state of being open and malleable, and something can easily slip past the gates then. Because in the video I did earlier about psychedelic medicine and my experiences with ketamine and spirituality, and talking a little bit more about the mechanics of how it works, is that neuroplasticity, they recommend, staying away from triggering media or things that you could be influenced by. Because, if someone was unscrupulous, they could manipulate you in that time period and make you believe things that you wouldn't normally believe, if they were using it for nefarious methods. If you are, so you have to be careful. But if I was doing ketamine every day, I would be in this permanently like open state that something could slip in. And the same goes for any of, I feel like with like drugs like heroin and opioids and meth, that you would be more likely to get like a parasitic entity attachment. The other thing we're looking into, and this is another area I need to explore further because my knowledge on it isn't that great, is the archons. That it can also be something that has to do with attachments there. But the thing that I can say on the spiritual side of it, and I talk about this a lot, is that you really need to keep an excellent spiritual hygiene and protection. It's not just against people doing magic against you. It's if you're doing a kind of astral travel, even deep meditation, like you can get, astral parasites attached to you, or these and things like that. So, and also to protect yourself from, say, hey, something kind of taking you over, getting like that sort of thing. So I do Reiki on myself every day. I have other people I have other healers I work with regularly. Um, you know, do my regular, salt baths, cleansing. I know water is a really excellent, especially like if you're being attacked by a spirit, like get in water. Like I had that happen once where I felt like something was attacking me when I was asleep and I was stuck in this like sleep paralysis state. And as soon as I was able to, I kept like thinking I was awake, but I wasn't. I just kept going into this, like I kept trying to wake up and I couldn't. And I would think I was awake, but then realize, oh fuck, I'm still asleep. Kept trying to wake up. And then finally, once I did, I literally just like got out of bed and like stumbled into the shower and just, yeah. Oh, it was fine. So it's just kind of knowing how to protect yourself in that sense. Like labradorite, the crystal, got a little palm stone right here. Probably can't see it very well because it's kind of dark in here right now. Like this is a good stone to have to protect from like psychic attacks. And if you're going to be most vulnerable for any of these things when you're asleep, so pop a piece under your pillow or put it between under the bed or in between the mattress and the box springs, whatever. So this is something that I feel like there's been a lot of synchronicity for me, like um when it comes to the walk-in souls. Like it's coming up for me. It's like something's going, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. So I'm paying attention. Because I think it's something that I may be seeing happening to people. And I don't want people to put themselves into put themselves into a situation or working with someone whose energy is so chaotic that they risk becoming a walk-in soul. I hope you found this interesting. This is something I might talk about again in the future, but something is downloading. I feel like this is an important message to come through right now. There's something energetically going on. There's a lot of shifting in energies. I don't know if we're all on the same timeline anymore. That could be some of it. I don't know. I feel like I need to talk to sorry, something's starting to come through. It's probably one of my spirits being like, because I'll show you what's interesting when I first started before I log off. So I kind of wrote this down. I started writing something. It was talked about the Aeon of Metropolis, and then okay, so this is what came through. The walk-in souls are mirrored ego egregores of the shadow made manifest of the person they used to be. Parasitic souls lost attached to a vortex created by ego, hate, addiction, and violence. The original soul is corrupt, 404 not found. Bound beneath the deepest ocean, locked away. They're not fully human anymore. They're agents of chaos and destruction. They let them in to wandering souls, parasites, cast out. Who are they? No one, nothing, trying to be something. And then what's really kind of freaky is I wrote down a whole bunch of prisoner numbers and execution date and an execution number. So what does this say? Deviated through, though not celestial or infernal. Stuck, lost. And then I was like, exorcise them, question mark. And then I went to Sanctificator Nomen Tumen, Adveniat Regnum Tuum, which is part of the Lord's Prayer in Latin, which somewhere is still buried in my brain from my sophomore in high school theology class. It says, no, not that, bind them. Frozen in ice, buried in earth, wrapped in plastic, encased in cement. Disconnect 181.37.2911, which sounds like an IP address. Is that my IP address? I don't know. But so it sounds like the way to deal with wandering souls or these walk-in souls is to bind them, because I was asking to exorcise or banish them. So it sounds like they need to be bound. But anyways, I just kind of ripped this out of whatever random book I wrote it in and then stuck it in my big book of shit. So anyways, I think that's what they were trying to remind me of, because I'm a little like sleep derpy. Anyways, don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I will be back to you with more content than I can shake a stick at. I don't know. The energy's been crazy, and I've just gotten so many messages and so many things that I feel like it's right now. It's like there is an urgency in the things I need to express, to bring to you, to talk about, especially with like the channel messages. So yeah. Anyways, love you.